And hey everyone, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Ben Kaplan. I'm the CEO of Top Global, and I'm coming to you right now from Queensland, Australia. And it's a really relevant topic that I've been wanting to discuss for a long time. And our topic today is crisis marketing, 7 ways to grow your business in a downturn. And one of the goals for today is really to have actionable advice, things that you can do today, tomorrow, this week, next week, to make a difference from your business. And in particular, what I'd love to start out with before we get into the slides is just talking about why for a lot of businesses in a lot of different verticals, now is a great time to think about marketing. And in particular, I'd ask you to kind of think about this situation. Imagine if I told you before all of this pandemic happened, imagine if I told you that, okay, there was going to be a situation coming up where we were going to see 50% greater open rates in all of your email marketing, right? If they said, okay, this is going to come up, this is going to happen, May, June timeframe, you're going to get, 50% boost in all of your email open rates. And on top of that, we're going to see when people actually open the emails, we're going to see, depending on your industry, about 60 to 80% increase in click-through. So I said, okay, so they're opening my emails, people are just getting the message more, they're engaging more with my emails. And then what if we also said that in addition to this, a lot of your competitors, a lot of other big players in your industry, they're going to be dealing with all sorts of other business considerations, health considerations, social considerations. And in fact, some of them are going to probably not even have marketing departments in the same way that they did before this period. So that same thing happens again. Let's say. So we're dealing with like higher, reach. We're dealing with more engagement. We're dealing with more click-through. We see competitors that are kind of taking their eye off the ball. And if we said all of that and said this was all going to happen in this sort of like April, May, June, July timeframe, say like a lot of the rest of 2020, if I would have told you this before all of this happened with the pandemic, you likely would have been like, oh my gosh, we've got to, let's ramp up. We've got, this is our moment. This is our opportunity. Let's do this. And all of the things I've just described have in fact happened. Those are all statistics from a lot of the work that we do with clients across the board, across many different industries, many different countries, many different verticals. And because it comes on the heels of what is essentially, a health crisis, then a financial crisis, then a sort of social and cultural crisis in terms of all of the protests around the world, then because of that, it sort of colors how we look at it. But in terms of reaching our audience, now is a great time. Now, the second point that's kind of interesting, and this is the third webinar I've done in the series, and I've done 2 others related to the crisis. One is called Pivot, Don't Pause. The second one was called How to Become a Thought Leader During the Crisis. And 2 of the other considerations I want to talk about is specifically what the top performing companies do in a period of downturn and why they're so successful. And one of the big things, and we looked at, the past 4 financial recessions. So that was like kind of the 2008 Great Recession, the dot-com bubble burst, and then there was one in kind of 1990 and 1980 related to different causation. And in all of those, this is for my first webinar, and all of those specific downturns, one of the key elements, one of 3 common things that the top 9% of all companies did that other people did not do was invest in marketing. And specifically, a specific way of investing in marketing, were marketing that paid dividends for the short term, helped them weather the storm, but then ultimately allowed them to win in the long term because they weren't sacrificing potential long-term gains for the short term. They're actually positioning themselves to be top of mind. So that's what this webinar is all about. How do we take this moment of which we have a higher engaged audience, maybe a lesser supply of competitors at the moment who are engaged in marketing? How do we act like the top 9% of overall companies, which I call the crisis conquerors, the ones that fundamentally improve their market position during a downturn? And if we know that marketing is one of the key elements to that story, then how do we be really strategic about marketing, and how do we invest in the things that really drive results, optimize the things that are good but not great, and discard the things that aren't really going to serve us much purpose right now? And that's what this is about. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We're going to start with some slides. I'll tell you a little bit about myself very quickly in probably 2 minutes or less, just because I think it's important to understand, and anyone's presenting tips or advice or insights, their perspective. And then we're going to focus on 7 things that you can do right away to grow your business, even in this downturn. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully everyone can see that right there, and feel free, you know, we have a chat room as well, so I'm going to kind of turn on the chat room here, and if there's any questions or if you can't see anything, then let me know. But let's start with crisis marketing: 7 ways to grow your business in the downturn. And just to understand my perspective of all this, I actually had my first business, or really it was my first book, which got its birth really during the dot-com bubble. So that was we got a full screen mode here. That was a book called How to Go to College Almost for Free. That is me on the cover. I hope it doesn't deter anyone from actually reading the book. And this was a book based on my experiences in winning 24 scholarships worth $90,000. I was the kid at the time. You know, this is you know, really 1999 when I started with the book, and then into kind of the dot-com bubble. This was the time. I was the kid who hustled around, went to Harvard for free by winning all these scholarships. And this was a self-published book initially. No one was interested in the book. But during this period of downturn, during this period of uncertainty, people wanted more insight, more financial certainty, more ability to invest and go back and pursue their education. And so this was a book that was scaled to 2.5 million copies and really got its launch and start in that dot-com bubble burst. And then a couple other things since then, just, you know, about us. I became the pitch trainer at Startup Chile, helped launch companies in more than 50 countries around the world. And if you haven't heard of Startup Chile before, you should. It's great. It's almost like a pre-incubator, one of the only incubator programs for startups in the world, where they give you money for your startup, a place to work, a place to live, and don't ask for any equity. So you could imagine it's pretty popular with a lot of people. And I was the guy who people came to my sessions and learned about and adjusted their elevator pitch and their elevator deck to raise more money from investors. And one of the things we specifically did was we looked at marketing strategies that had a really high return in a short amount of time that would significantly shift perceptions of their value to potential investors. And I got that start in Startup Chile, and the agency was really an outgrowth of that. And finally, now, we have a number of agencies in the top universe, is what we call it. TOP stands for test, optimize, and perform. It's our methodology. We like to measure everything. Many people have called us the most data-driven agency. And so test, optimize, perform means top. And we're known for certain agencies like PR Hacker, which is a viral marketing and viral PR agency, but we have many, many others. Top Data focuses exclusively on how to use data for marketing purposes. To become a thought leader quickly, and there's many more. So with that being said, let's jump in. We are PR Hacker and Top, and this presentation comes from PR Hacker. That agency is about 40 full-time people, 40 part-time. We're in Austin, San Francisco, New York, and London. We're known for digital innovation, and these are some of the clients of PR Hacker, one of the top agencies that starts with scrappy startups and went into big brands. So 7 ways to grow your business in a downturn. We're going to talk about 7. There's 7 different ways, and we're going to talk about how you leverage those for your success right now. And feel free to participate in the chat and ask any questions. So, way number 1, build credibility via social proof. How can you enhance your credibility in your existing market, in new markets, with new products, with new types of customers very quickly? And there's some advantages in how you can do this during a downturn. So the first way we can do this and start thinking about this is generating a high quantity of media mentions at a regular cadence to show widespread reach. So there's a real earned media advantage in a downturn or in a crisis or in the current situation we're in, because basically there's a lot of new events happening, a lot of disruptive events, and there's not a lot of insight about how to navigate those. And a lot of the traditional players, the big players who we go to, they're just trying to stay afloat, or they're distracted by some other aspect of their business. So it's a huge opportunity, and every time there's a crisis, usually there's a new set of sort of companies, brands, and thought leaders that emerge. You can think back to something like let's say a big event, wasn't even a financial crisis, but something like the O.J. Simpson trials, which were televised on TV and was a big event. Well, there's a whole bunch of legal analysts, hosts, lawyers that became prominent from that. And that was because it was a crisis. It was a moment, and people needed expert advice to navigate that. So one, this is a real opportunity, particularly if you can leverage, and we'll talk about that, how to leverage the current situation to become a prolific leverager of earned media. So that's number one. Within that, within this first way of showing social proof, and these are all basically, media brands that offer halo to our brand, we can target top tier publications that offer prestige and a substantial halo effect to our brand. So right now, if you have a unique insight, and maybe you've never been in the New York Times before, but if you have that insight, this is a great time to do it. Let me give you an example. So one of our clients, a company called ZenReach, has insights about how many people are walking into stores, what foot traffic is like based on the data they collect. So this is a moment that we're able to place them with a lot of top tier media that hasn't, covered them before or hasn't really been aware of them before, because they have something unique and valuable that we can package. And what happens is you place them in these places. So we've had, a great run of sort of top tier media placements for them. And that lasts beyond the crisis, right? There's useful information to the crisis, but what happens is these media outlets get used to using them as a source of data, quoting them as experts, getting insights from them. So what we say is right now, what normally would take 3 years in terms of thought leadership can be done in 3 months if you're strategic about it. So one, we talk about quantity. Two, we talk about quality. And this is all getting social proof from third-party sources like media outlets to propel you forward. And third, align social proof efforts to key industry verticals that match your goals or your sales goals. So the third way that you can actually do this is if you are looking to go into industries. Maybe it's a new line of a new product line that gets you in a different industry. Maybe it's a new persona or a new customer type. Maybe if you're a B2B company. So all of those industries have publications and trade publications where people don't know how to make sense of what's going on. So what is going to be, the financial implication of all this? What is this going to mean for the next 3 to 5 years of business in our industry? What is this going to mean for accelerating adoptions of certain technologies and tools? If we're all working remote from home, what is that going to mean for the industry? So all of these are important questions, and they can be answered on an industry basis as well. So let me give you an example to kind of show you more specifically how this works and how you can use earned media coverage. This is the first way to get, basically a halo effect to your brand and get more social proof. So we have one blueprint. It's called the geo ranking, and specifically, it's about how do we compare different regions of each other to generate local news at global scale. So here is an example of what this looks like. This is a headline that we used to place in the Boston Globe. So Boston ranked number 4 in the world for venture capital funding of synthetic biology. So this headline and this geo-ranking method is all about ranking geographies against each other to create a local result that we can scale everywhere. So that is a way to get earned media right now by building credibility via social proof by using data in an interesting way. And then let's go to the next one, bold ask. So what bold question, let me just slide here, could we make that repositions our brand and makes us seem more noteworthy? So here's another way to get earned media coverage in the current crisis. So here we have a headline, will this startup save 100 million lives by 2025? This was used for Business Insider. So this headline is newsworthy because of its boldness, right? If you say, okay, a startup that can save lives, one, that gets my attention right away. Two, a startup that maybe could save 100 million lives. Okay, this is some kind of startup that has huge potential impact and a huge social good. Three, by 2025, well, that's not tomorrow, but that's not, 100 years from now either. So, wow, that's really interesting. So this is another way to generate interest. And like I said, there's a better ability to get more media, more quantity of media mention, better quality of media mentions from top tiers, and also industry vertical coverage. Here's a couple more examples and we'll move on to the next point. So Holidata. How do we use data to supply interesting insights for moments or occasions or holidays coming up? This is one we did for Mother's Day for CNN. Red Eye Mommy. 52% of moms have stayed up late with their kids proofreading a paper. What we basically did is repositioned the Mother's Day holiday for a client of ours that is a platform for helping kids with homework. And so suddenly we said, okay, there's many reasons to thank mom. Moms deserve our thanks. Moms deserve our celebration. Moms deserve our love and our gifts on Mother's Day. But also, don't forget that they were the one who stayed up late with you and helped you do that paper. And our client, Brainly in this case, can help you with that. And let's recognize moms and let's shift the holiday to have a different focus. Okay, so these are all different ways that we can, basically generate social proof by giving the media what they want, and it can ladder back to our brand. Brings us to point number 2, warm up cold leads. And I'll just kind of stop my screen share for a second to talk about this one. So there's tremendous ability in a crisis like we're in one now to actually reach and connect with all sorts of potential, consumers, customers, leads, clients, partners in the current environment. Why is that? There's a few reasons. Well, one, all of those potential leads and customers and clients and businesses, they all also are having higher engagement now too, meaning they're reading more emails, they're clicking on more links, they're more open to participating in webinars like these ones, right? So this is also a moment where you can reach and you can stay top of mind, and those that were maybe too busy previously that now are staying at home, it now suddenly can be reachable. And also, it is a great opportunity because in a lot of industries where business is traditionally done face-to-face, and some of you know, and I have friends, for instance, who work in high finance at private equity firms, where their usual course of business is they're flying all over the world to do face-to-face meetings, and no one's going to take like a Zoom, virtual, meeting or a Google Hangout or something like that. That has completely flipped when I talk to all my friends working in those industries, and a lot of the meetings that we have as well, where suddenly lots of people are at home, they have a bit more time, they're not doing their commute, so they just got an extra 2 hours per day, and there's less of an expectation that we're going to sit down face to face, and so you don't get the kind of meeting schedules where like, yeah, let's meet this week, but why don't we wait till you're in town for the conference? That's in 6 weeks. Let's get together then. That's sort of suddenly changed. So there's a real premium on what we can do to suddenly, it's an opportunity to warm up cold leads. So let me jump back into the kind of slide deck, and let's go to some of the ways that we can do that. So here's a question for you. How many LinkedIn posts have you done in the past 30 days? And maybe you can think about this, and here's the answers I typically get. I've done a couple. That's better than not having done any. Some people say they've done like 1 per week. Maybe you've done a little bit more than that. You're saying LinkedIn is a good channel. Okay, let's do a couple more. If you're really ambitious, maybe you do 1 per day. So the point I want to make in terms of warming up cold leads is if you're a B2B company in particular, and you're not posting on LinkedIn at least 10 times per day. And I don't mean just from your company channel. I mean, like all of maybe your C-suite, your leadership, your different founders. So it's different, different LinkedIn accounts. But cumulatively, 10 times per day, particularly if you're a B2B company, you're going to regret it, because this is, in fact, the golden age of LinkedIn. And this golden age means that when are the moments in time when you could get unfair social media reach? And unfair means you don't have to earn it, meaning you don't have to have amazingly engaging content where the algorithm recognizes that and shows you to more people. So how can you leverage these moments in time? And so if you would have been in Facebook in 2012 to 2016, it's like you would just posted more, you would have got amazing reach. Many businesses were actually built on that. Instagram was later, 2014 to 2017. And right now with LinkedIn, this is the golden age right now. So this is a moment where we can really leverage that. So Here is a few other things and kind of strategies as a second method that you can do. And what I want to do is kind of talk about what I call a LinkedIn Inception program. And what a LinkedIn Inception program is, and we've done this with a lot of clients, is how can you influence the perceptions of a specific list of business targets by essentially entering their newsfeed, having a stream of strategic content to their personal and professional social media feeds, all without them realize they're being targeted. So a way to think about this is a little bit like, a more strategic, subtle, and tactful way when you you visit a website and suddenly you get all of these retargeting ads that follow you around, right? Now you're just browsing around the internet, it's kind of creepy, and suddenly you're seeing, you visit the website once, and this is kind of even funny for our staff, our team at PR Hacker and Top Global, where it's like we do this for all kinds of topics for clients, right? So you click on something for a client, and then suddenly it will follow you around the internet. So a more subtle way to do this with LinkedIn is what you do is you actually do, maybe small ad buys that are targeting maybe 100 people at a time, like 100 leads. And it's expensive on LinkedIn on a per lead basis. But when you're doing small buys and you're not paying if they don't click, then suddenly it's manageable. And what you actually do is you tell a story through those that enter their newsfeed. And as they engage with content, you retarget them subtly. Again, not the ads that just follow you around, but subtly on other platforms that are less expensive. So very common for us is we'll seed this on LinkedIn, very focused on a very small group of people that are real kind of, potential leads or customers for our clients. And then what we'll do is suddenly, even though it's not traditionally platforms we associate with business like Facebook, once they engage in something, they click on a post, they go to a page, they'll receive a cookie, and then suddenly on Facebook, they'll start seeing other things and other things of high value content. So this is another way that's a great opportunity right now. And in our opinion, LinkedIn is a second opportunity in this crisis and in this pandemic, because a lot more people that are not regular LinkedIn users now are LinkedIn users, especially because a lot of people obviously been affected from a layoff perspective and are looking for new work as well. And they're going to get those new jobs, and they're going to be looking for different providers, vendors to help them with that. That LinkedIn can help you tremendously in creating lead awareness to turn cold leads into warm leads. It can project an enhanced image of what your company is. If you're trying to bridge the gap from where you are to where you want to be, it can help with that. And third, it can support a lot of partnership deals as well. So LinkedIn, definitely an important kind of tool in your toolkit of what you're doing now in the current crisis. Point number 3, become a category thought leader. Thought leaders and making your brand or your company or your organization or even you personally as a thought leader has tremendous value because of what it allows you to do and how it speeds up the cycle of so many other aspects of marketing and sales. When you're a thought leader, you pull people to you instead of having to push yourselves out to people. What does that mean? Pulling means people seek you out. People come to your website. They click on your link. They fill out your form. They inquire about setting up a demo or an initial call. Pushing, the alternative requires big sales force, big teams. It's expensive. It's slow moving. Now, to a certain extent, all good companies and good marketers and good sales organizations do a combination of pull and push. But when you're a thought leader, and particularly if you're trying to do this in a more scrappy manner, the pull becomes really, really important. And you can do that by becoming a category thought leader. So one of the fastest ways to establish your leadership, and this is an opportunity right now in the current crisis, is to become a source of truth for data in your industry. And let me give you an example of how that works. So here is how to create data-driven news. First, you leverage a timely news peg. This is a lot of what people don't realize, is that you don't just create data and then on your schedule say, here's some data, this is interesting, this is cool. Instead, you've got to relate to what is happening right now. Now, here's the good news. The good news is you have an amazing news peg. If you can relate yourself to, again, the health challenge, the financial challenge, the social cultural challenge that's happening right now, if you can find a way to relate yourself to that, and we can talk about how to do that, you've got a fantastic way to have a reason to sort of be a thought leader right now at this moment. Second, you create a data study related to that news peg. And data study sounds a little bit ambitious for what we mean. I don't mean a 120-page white paper that required a team of 5 to do the research to do it. You can actually find clever ways to use and reuse and package data in simple ways. Let me give you one example. We did this for Top Data, our data-driven agency. We actually, because there was a lot of coverage of what's going to be the effect of unemployment as a result of this crisis, we used as a data source the Indeed.com API because it was the most popular, job platform and portal. And we simply started looking at what is the job creation week over week throughout this crisis. And we noticed that in May, there started to be an uptick in new jobs being created. And we saw a 3% greater suddenly uptick in the amount of job postings there were. And that actually was an insight that allowed us to be cautiously optimistic that the unemployment numbers would get a bit better in the US where we did the study. And lo and behold, by the end of May, suddenly everyone was shocked and everyone was surprised that unemployment looked better. And this was actually something that we predicted, and we did a whole series of TV interviews saying we're cautiously, very cautiously optimistic that things are looking a little bit better. And we foreshadowed that by 2 to 3 weeks compared to anyone else. So was that a hard data study to do while it required some insight? Actually pulling the data and crunching it was something that was done in a few hours that allowed us to be relevant. So create a data study, post a study on your website, pitch the data story to mass media. The media links to the full study, and you get inbound traffic in SEO. And one of the points I want to make is right now, if you do search engine optimization, if you want to rank high in Google, it is a fantastic time to accelerate it because so many other marketing shops, SEO shops have been disrupted. Their teams have been disrupted. They're taking their eye off the ball right now. And we've seen this across the board, that we've seen greater gains faster in SEO than we've seen in the past 2 years right now. And data-driven news is a great way to do that because when you have data that is valuable, people need to cite the data. People need to show how to get more of the data. And both of those two things lead to links. And links is the fastest driver we have of shooting up the Google rankings. Okay, so here's how you do it practically. You identify windows of opportunity for the data. Maybe it's a drive period. Maybe it's an industry event. Maybe it's a viral trend. You gather data from each time window. There's many different sources. So we were just talking about digital data. That was using Indeed, but there's public data. You can create your own with surveys. We do surveys as an agency almost every day. And so we can help you create your survey if you'd like. You can use your own brand data as well. And finally, how you do this is you connect data to specific brand benefits. So you don't just say, here's a pile of data. It's generally related to our company, and that's it. Instead, what you do, what's most valuable, is you take each brand benefit and you connect a piece of data to it. So for instance, let's take something where you just don't expect data to be used. If you have, if you're a pet food company, and as part of that pet food, one of your kind of brand benefits is that, let's say, pets deserve to be treated like an equal member of the family. They deserve something better. They deserve to be treated like a family member, hence they deserve better food. Well, if that's your brand benefit, is that you have better quality of food. Why? Because pets deserve that because they're a true family member. Then suddenly you could have a data concept related to, for instance, a survey on what % of people think that treat pets like they're a child, and what are the states that most go out of their way to make sure that pets are well taken care of. Do they give gifts to their pets? Do they take pets on long walks? Do they tell their pets, I love you, right? So what you're doing is connecting brand benefits, even on this is a totally different sort of consumer topic, to a data concept that you can use to generate thought leadership quickly, okay? And then finally, you segment data according to geography, industry verticals, use cases, and that's how you end up with, let's say, your initial data pitch. But then you also have the millennial, report that's focused on millennials, or the women's report, which we did for a client of ours called FreshBooks. We took their data about freelancers and we packaged it for female freelancers to get insights. So this starts to be how you can segment and reuse and redeploy data to have different niche audiences and to get more interest. So all of these are ways that allow us to become a category thought leader quickly. And that's why we say, don't wait for news to happen, use data to create the news. And I'll just say that a little bit more slowly. Don't wait for news to happen. Use data to create the news. And one of the things that surprises a lot of folks is that we are actually in the news creation business. Not creating news that doesn't have meaning, it doesn't have purpose, but in fact, what I call simple, surprising, and significant news. Simple news that's easy to understand, surprising news because it breaks your expectation in some way, like our unemployment data that said maybe unemployment's gonna swing up a little bit, improve a little bit. And third, is it significant? Are we saying something of great importance? Brings us to our next point. And I'll open up the screen share again here, and that is, in a crisis, in a downturn, is a great opportunity to unseat a tough competitor. And here's a stat for you. We looked at all of the academic research and literature about the past 4 financial crises. Again, the 2008, the kind of the dot-com bubble, the 1990, the 1980. And here's the sort of awesome, at the same time scary statistic, depending on your perspective on this. And that is that 85% of market leaders, the companies that are in the #1 position in their market or industry when we enter this financial downturn, are no longer market leaders at the end. So 8.5 out of 10 companies that are #1 in what they do will not be #1 in about 3 years. So there's a huge disruption. And so either A, if you're an up and comer, you're the scrappy challenger brand, then this is your moment because everything's going to be disrupted. Or maybe you are the #1 position in your field, in which case this is your moment to defend your position because there's going to be a lot of chaos and a lot of companies that are leaders like you are going to be disrupted. So here's how this looks like in an actual pie chart. This is one I actually pulled from a client before they started with us, where like, this is the share of voice. What that means is, this is like the conversation in our industry, like 96% is around them, right? Maybe the big players, the market leaders, 4% is us. How do we start flipping that around? Well, there's some great tactics that you can use in a downturn to do this. The first is called the slingshot. And what the slingshot is essentially saying, okay, if competitors are going to be talked about, if competitors are going to be covered, then that can be to our benefit. And what you do is basically create what we call a rapid response program where we will map out who talked about our competitors, mass media, influencers, others in the past 12 months. We'll map that out. And then on an ongoing basis, and we use a cocktail of 10 plus different tools to monitor this, but you can even do this even with something as simple as Google Alerts. We'll track what our competitors, what the conversation is that they're entering. And in real time, each day, every day, we will actually, if someone talks about a competitor, we will immediately contact that person. And that's not to say that we don't just contact them for our clients and say, hey, you covered our competitor, you know, we're really better, shouldn't you cover us? No, instead what we'll say is, hey, we saw that article that you wrote the other day, and and sorry, let me close this out here. And we will actually, offer insights, advice, a new data study, other aspects that they could use to supplement their story or write a new one. We'll actually do that and offer that to the person who just wrote the story about the competitor. And the potential gains you can have if you just do this consistently is enormous. It really is like compound interest. And we pioneered a stat with our clients that not a lot of other people use yet, but we call it share of mind. So lots of people track share of voice, right? Which is like, to what extent is your voice in the total conversation? Share of mind says, let's say the gatekeepers, the journalists, the analysts, the influencers, to what extent they know about us and our brand? They're aware of us. 2, do they know something about us and why we're unique? 3, do they know something about us and why we're unique and why that is good and why that is good for potential customers and clients? These are all measures of mind share. And so what we'll do is we'll try to increase mind share, leveraging competitors where they're going and slingshotting around it to propel us forward. And just to use this kind of screenshot again, it's a little screenshot or a little schematic of a spaceship going around, let's say the moon or planet, which is a competitor, to accelerate, to go even faster. This is, by the way, how Matt Damon gets home in the movie The Martian. If you're Tom Hanks fans in the movie Apollo 13, this is also a common astrophysics technique, but we can use that to our great benefit to unseat a tough competitor. So here's an example of what this looks like for a client of ours in data visualization. When we look at their competitors, wow, there's 10,000 plus examples. And this was in 2018 when we did this and used it to propel them forward, 10,000 plus examples to actually enter the conversation with a journalist or an influencer or with an analyst that our competitor was actually mentioned in. They paved the highway, but we can drive down it. Here's a couple other ways to do that. The Goliath is how do you use large companies in your industry to raise your profile? So for instance, Apple. Apple is a big Goliath company. There are big top tier media outlets that just have people that are assigned to cover Apple. That's all, that's primarily what they do. And so Apple can generate news that we can leverage to propel us forward. So for instance, if Apple is coming out with a new iPhone model, and we're a marketplace for used gadgets where you can sell your old iPhone, this is a real client of ours, then suddenly you can run that data survey that says, what are the most wanted features of the new iPhone? You run that and pitch that 2 to 3 weeks before the new Apple device is announced. And suddenly everyone wants to cover you because you've entered the Apple conversation, and Apple's super secretive at this point. They're not talking about what their new product's gonna be. So suddenly you can add insight, add value to Apple's conversation and propel yourself forward. Likewise, the Newsjack. The Newsjack says, how can we start tracking keyword terms? And if those keyword terms are mentioned, we're instantly gonna message the journalist and enter their mind share as well. So summarizing all this together, here are 3 types of rapid response, which is a fantastic way to unseat a tough competitor. One is called the slingshot, that's competitor response. One is called Goliath, that's related company response. One is called the Newsjack, that's topical response. And if this is a moment to unseat a tough competitor, then rapid response is a great way to do this. And by the way, one other little stat from the past 4 recessions, companies that launched new products during a crisis or during a recession were 3 times more likely to succeed with that product, which is an amazing stat, right? Like, why would you launch a product in such an environment, such a downturn? And the reason is, in sort of the academic literature, is that actually, when you launch in those moments, a lot of your big competitors, the ones that would normally drown you out, they're not focused on it. They're taking their eye off the ball. So actually launching new types of products in tough times can allow you to get footing with an audience, allow you to circumvent tough competitors that would normally, kind of make life very difficult for you. And it can be a great opportunity right now. And a great way to do that is actually using this rapid response methodology. Brings us to point number 5. And point number 5 is about influencing the influencers. Specifically, who are the people that drive disproportionate reach, disproportionate engagement, disproportionate influence to others? And how do we influence them? And because of the receptiveness right now to online, digital engagement, webinars, all types of marketing, that this is a greater opportunity right now to influence the influencers. So let me give you some examples of how we do that specifically and why influencer marketing it has such high potential right now. So we call this the power of scalable relationships. And that is, not all relationships are created equal. A relatively few number of analysts, journalists, gatekeepers have an oversized impact on our brand perception. And how many, how many people do you have to influence? I'm going to answer that in a question. I'm going to give you a specific number. But to start with, this is our influencer relationship pipeline. So what we are trying to do is scale our relationships with the people who matter most, from a basic level where, they're just like, we have no special relationship. We call that the reporter level, to a receptor level where the influencer is very familiar with our brand, to the amplifier level where they are interested in receiving news about our brand and actually seek to distribute it, to the supporter level where not only are they distributing our news, but they're doing it in really from a positive perspective. And finally, the advocate level, where they are fans. They are effusively spreading information. And so what we will do is we will track our relationships for ourselves and for our clients with different influencers, and we start moving them from stage to stage. And if you've done any type of sales before, this isn't that foreign to you, because like this might be a lead status pipeline, or this might be an opportunity pipeline when you're trying to close deals. For us, we think there's tremendous advantage to do this right now in the current situation for influence, for relationships with those you want to influence because they influence others. So how this works is we'll do 360-degree activity tracking. So we're tracking what the influencers are writing about, what they're posting about, what they're commenting on. So we're doing all of that on an ongoing basis. And this is how we'd example of, this is Lauren's reporter for Wired. And so this is how we're engaging with her to go from reporter to receptor to amplifier to supporter to advocate on an ongoing basis. And then here's the answer to the number question. We think 40 is an interesting number in terms of the number of influencers we want to influence. And the reason is because it gives us enough quantity that, you know, not everything you do will result in the amazing influence you want. But this isn't so many, like 100, which we've also tried, that it kind of dilutes your focus on just focusing on those who really matter most. So this notion of top 40, which is through a lot of trial and error that we got at, is a great range to be like, this is enough scale, this is enough people to move the needle for us, but this is not so many that we lose our focus. Okay, so influence to influencers. Brings us to point number 6, bolster your brand reputation. So here's a question for you. How much business do you lose from legacy reviews and comments that don't even reflect your current product? What I mean by that is someone wrote something in a forum, 5 years ago and said, oh, you didn't have this feature, or your product didn't have, wasn't up to this other level that they had in their mind, or there was some other aspect in which you were somehow lacking. That happened a long time ago. Meanwhile, since then, you've iterated your product, you've improved it, you've tested, you've optimized, you've performed. That's our top methodology. You've done all these things, you've gotten better. But yet, now, people don't know that. And so there is a great moment and a great time right now to actually bolster your brand reputation by improving your digital footprint. And the ways you can do this, the ways we help our clients do this, is number 1, respond to negative criticism. So this is an example for some ones that we did in sort of the the sort of like IP telephone space. There's some negative criticism. How do we respond to it at scale? And we actually built some tools that allow us to kind of see the entire 100,000 forums and see where maybe someone said something bad or not as good, and how do you respond to that? Now is a great time to do that. Second way is enter competitive discussions. So if people are talking about our competitors, in this case it was Grasshopper and Vonage for our client, then how do we start entering their conversation right now? How do we start doing that? We have teams of folks all over the world that just sort of seek out these opportunities and enter competitor conversations. And third, answer product questions. So how do we increase that and basically bolster our brand reputation by having really interesting, insightful answers, whether that's on Quora, whether that's elsewhere. This is an opportunity right now. And again, higher engagement, higher reach, higher potential, and yet less people are doing this because marketing budgets have been disrupted. So these are all ways that, and this is how we do it and how I recommend doing it, which is you can monitor posts from 100,000 different websites. There's a bunch of tools now online where you can kind of see, where are certain keywords or Boolean phrases mentioned. And then you go to the Q&A sites, the curation sites, the specialty forums, and you can improve your brand reputation. And when you do that, what usually surprises a lot of clients is they didn't realize how much business they were losing just because they had a negative review from 5 years ago, and maybe the reviewer was a bit unfair. Maybe they had a unique circumstance that's 1 in a million, and yet that is dragging down your business without you realizing it. It's like driving around with the parking brake on if a lot of people are seeing that. So now is the time to correct that. Brings us to point number 7. And point number 7 is all about triggering your prospects or your customers or your potential consumers to buy now. how do you trigger them to do that? And specifically, I want to give you an example that pulls upon some of the work we did with a company called Postmates. Maybe you're aware of them. Obviously, they're delivering a lot of food right now to those of you who are sheltering in place or staying at home right now. And I want to talk about how you can leverage triggers. And in particular, and actually, if you missed it, you should check this out on my YouTube channel. I'll show you that page in a second here. But what you want to do is specifically, I have a past webinar on this, is how do you create certain triggers that drive action now? And I want to give you an example of that and what these triggers are. So let's jump in here and let me share my screen again. So specifically, here was the Postmates challenge. Can we get 1,000 new users, so they haven't used Postmates before, to download the Postmates app and buy something in a single day? And oh, by the way, we can't use any kind of paid marketing. That was the challenge. This is all going to be earned. We're going to deserve it. We're going to flex our creative muscles, our viral triggers, and we're going to use that to cause action. And so here's what we came up with. We leveraged a moment that we didn't create, but we thought it was interesting, which was a little known holiday called National Eat What You Want Day. We looked at that holiday, we thought there was opportunity, and we said, hey, there's some triggers built into this. One, eat what you want, right? There's an emotional trigger related to that. Like, right, when you're having that craving, when you want that comfort food, when you're like, man, I could use some really good chocolate right now, right? Eat what you want, there's a trigger built in. And then we added more triggers to it. So our offer was whatever your city wants to eat most, and we determine what your city wants to eat most by having a survey unique to your city, Postmates will buy and deliver for free. And so this is important because Postmates has a user acquisition cost that is a lot more expensive than buying someone, you know, a snack or their favorite food. So if we'd acquire users all day long if we could do it at that price, given the cost of user acquisition in a competitive market. So this offer utilized 3 viral action triggers. There's a location trigger, because we're doing this on a per metro market, per city basis. It's why we love doing localization at national and global scale. Second, there's a time trigger basis. So it's a national holiday. It's a moment. National Eat What You Want Day. You can't put it off. You can't delay. And third, there is an emotional trigger. So it's like what you want to eat, that craving, that drive. So all of these triggers are layered together to drive action. And this is how, even in an economic downturn, you can trigger prospects or leads or potential customers to buy now. So let me kind of show you what happened. The kind of takeaway here is that we wanted to create local news that could, 1, air on the evening news. 2, people would tweet about it, post about it, you know, post on their Facebook page, tell their friends about it. Great word of mouth. And 3, could actually cause people to act now and not delay. So it couldn't be something that was like, you know, yeah, that sounds great, I'm going to do it next month, right? It had to act now. And so here was the results. And if I share my screen, I'll kind of show you what this looks like. So these viral triggers created compelling local news. Television news covered the story. So this is like unpaid on the evening news in ABC Las Vegas or ABC Tampa. They are reporting the most craved food in their neighborhood. And by the way, basically when you survey this, it's like always a Big Mac. We discovered this. People like their McDonald's and particularly like Big Macs. So across the board, it was like Big Macs. And they were not only featuring our survey results, but they were saying, hey, Las Vegas, hey, Tampa, you can get a free Big Mac courtesy of Postmates today by getting the Postmates app and using this offer code. So essentially, we were able to get a coupon code on the evening news for no cost. This at great scale. It wasn't just the evening news. Print publications loved it. So these were actual headlines, you know, the Charlotte Observer, Postmates wants to give you a free Big Mac today. The Courier Journal in New Jersey, same thing. Influencers want to spread it. So we've got Chicago Foodie Sisters, I guarantee is not covering Big Macs that much. But on this day, we had enough viral triggers that they're going to cover it. Or online media. So a place like, you know, a viral outlet like Heavy. There's a way to get a free Big Mac today through the Postmates app. Or get a free Big Mac on National Eat What You Want Day. So these are all ways that these viral triggers level together. So here's what we were able to accomplish in a single day as part of this experiment. 60 plus media outlets covered our story in just one day. That was 20 plus TV stations, which was the equivalent of a big TV ad buy that we were able to completely replace with earned media. That was in 14 different US metro markets. And by the way, those were the markets, we had 14 markets that were the Postmate priority markets. So we were exclusively focused on those. We had 75 million impressions, and I know that's a little bit of a PR vanity metric, but in terms of the reach we had, I mean, this was like a major campaign, and again, in 24 hours. And then fourth, the positive brand image for Postmates was enormous. I mean, we weren't even focused on that, right? We were focused on like, how do we acquire users and customers at an amazing cost and speed. But in terms of the brand image, the fact that Postmates was in the news associated with positive things like what you want to eat, had different insights, the fact that Postmates was being positioned as a local company, not a national company, so local and really relevant to your community, all those were great positive brand benefits even that as we did this. So here was the results. We had over 10,000 clicks to a landing page we created. We had over 7,400 new users who downloaded the app. We delivered over 6,000 Big Macs in a single day. And it was one of the most successful customer acquisition campaigns ever for the company. So what have we learned today? In a couple minutes, I want to kind of wrap up with my final thought of the day, and probably the most important thought. And actually, let me just sort of say this too. If you're interested in this and want to see this, we are going to be posting, and you can see many of my other videos on a newly launched YouTube page. This is it right now. What you can just go on YouTube, and if you just search for my name, or if you want to do one of the webinars, you can search for, if you do Ben Kaplan, Pivot, Don't Pause. That's another one you search for it. You're going to come up with this page, and we have a lot of webinars, content. This one's going to be posted. That's all about how do you make marketing work faster and better for you? How do you test, optimize, and perform? So one, subscribe to the page, and we're going to be putting out all kinds of new content each week on this, and you're going to get alerts for it. So subscribe to the page, and you can find out more information there. And then let me mention kind of the most important kind of thought of the day, and then we'll wrap up. So here is what we learned today about how PR and marketing can scale growth in a crisis. One, we learned about building credibility via social proof. That social proof has someone else's brand, rubs off on your brand, and there's ways to do that using earned media right now that would have been so much more difficult 4 months ago. We can use PR and marketing to warm up cold leads. What this means is like being in the pole position in terms of mind share with your leads has great value. And in particular, LinkedIn is undervalued. And if you want to ask me questions, I'm going to give you my email address in a second. Let me know, because we are using LinkedIn right now for our clients at great scale. We do something called stackable content, which is turning pillar content from a company or brand into macro, micro, and nano content, and then deploying it on platforms like LinkedIn. That's a tremendous opportunity. 3, become a category thought leader, right? Pull people to you much more faster, more cost effective, more ROI than pushing people to someone else. You can use data to do that. So using data in interesting ways. For instance, our top data agency is the main data market research agency for marketing purposes for United Healthcare, right? Which is a top 10 Fortune 10 company in the US, one of the 10 largest companies in the US. And our entire purpose for them is to create data that they can use in a marketing capacity. So use data to become a category thought leader. 4, unseat a tough competitor. More than 8 out of 10 of market leaders in the #1 position in their market and industry are not going to be that way in 3 years because of this pandemic. So now is a time to ramp up, to go to head, to launch products that maybe you might be more timid to do otherwise. Now is your moment, because lots of these folks are going to be disrupted. Lots of them have cut marketing departments and budgets, and so their eye is off the ball. Number 5, influence the influencers. What this means is that a small group of people have a disproportionate leverage to shape the opinions of others. And if you treat it more of a staged process, more of a pipeline for what is our relationship pipeline, we can influence those influencers. 6, bolster your brand reputation. It's like compound interest in a positive way or a negative way. All of those legacy reviews or comments that don't even reflect your current offering. Now is the time to deal with that. We have teams all around the world that are doing hundreds and thousands of posts per day on behalf of our clients to improve that. And finally, trigger prospects to buy now. Remember the Postmates example. Add viral triggers like location, like time triggers, like scarcity triggers. That was one of the other things we didn't talk about we offered, but we said, hey, there's only 5,000 for the city of Houston today. You better act now. Do all of these things to trigger prospects to buy now. And so where does that leave us? I want to leave you with the single most important tip I can give you and the most important lesson for the day in the last 2 minutes we have together. And before I do that, here's how you can get in touch. So this is probably the fastest email for me to get in touch with me, ben.kaplan@prhacker.com. It also works, by the way, at ben.kaplan@topagency.com. Top is for our global agency network. But shoot me an email over there, ben.kaplan@prhacker.com. Happy to answer your questions. If you'd like to chat about your specifics about your company, happy to do so. If you're interested in potentially working together, let me know. Second, what is the one thing? What is the one thing that you take away from today that has the most value? Tweet it at me. The one thing that you found most interesting. We are constantly interested in what is the thing that sticks. And whenever time I go to a webinar or anytime I go to a conference, I don't try to remember 27 things because I want one thing that makes a difference in my business. That's more valuable than 10 things that I lose track of, right? So what is the one thing that stands out for today's presentation? You of course can email me, but also if you can, tweet at me @BenjaminKaplan. I'd love to learn about that. I'll respond and we can discuss it. And then finally, before I end with my final thought of the day, here is my LinkedIn page. If you haven't done this before, if you're holding up your phone and you're using the mobile app, you can hold up your phone like this. Go to the search bar on LinkedIn, click that little icon, which is there with the arrows pointing to it. And then you actually can choose something like scan a QR code. If you hold up your phone to the screen, you're going to scan this. You're going to go directly to the page and just add a note that you were in my webinar and I will accept your connection and we can correspond that way. Or you can jot down this address, which is just linkedin.com/in/KaplanBen, and you can get to me as well. And like I said, for all of the best, most up-to-date webinar content, not just webinars, just basically our best stuff, then go to the YouTube channel, search for my name, Ben Kaplan, Pivot, Don't Pause would be a great way to get there. Subscribe to that channel, and we'll make sure you get notified of those content as we come up with it. So in the final minute, let me end with the most important advice and tip and insight I can give you today, which is that now is not only a fantastic moment to not only survive, but thrive. But the way to do this is to incrementally get better. Incrementally improve. What I mean by that is, this might sound like a lot. You're saying, wow, yes, theoretically, I would love to do all of this, but we've just been hit hard. Our budgets are hard. We've had layoffs. We've had other things. How do we do it? So instead of doing that, instead of trying to tackle everything at once, incrementally improve. If you are trying to use data in new and exciting ways, do a simple data study and start incrementing that. If you are trying to be like, wow, I really should do more on LinkedIn, let's do that. Start with some incrementally improved posts. Look and learn from that. So the biggest mistake people make when they try to mount a major marketing program, but especially one where there's a lot of opportunity, like the conversation at the moment right now, is that they don't look for small ways to improve, and they don't look for small ways to improve and scale that. And the best piece of advice I can give you is that you don't have to go viral tomorrow. You don't have to have 10 LinkedIn posts every day by tomorrow. Look for small ways to increment and improve. Get feedback on those. Have a good feedback loop. Scale that further. And what you'll discover is that, like the old adage, a journey of 10,000 miles begins with the first step. You start taking a few steps and it gets easier, it gets faster, it accelerates, and you can make tremendous gains. And everything you do right now in the next 3 to 6 months is basically amplified to a greater extent. So every little step you take is like 4 steps, 7 steps, 10 steps. So take those small steps now, let it aggregate and accumulate, test, optimize, and perform to improve. And if you do that, you'll be well on your way to success. And look forward to hearing your success story and you being one of those companies, like for instance, an Airbnb, which launched during the 2008 financial recession, that becomes a tremendous success story in your industry because you're the right company with the right strategy at the right moment. So thank you all for coming. I wish you that kind of success. Check out the YouTube channel and subscribe for more. Email me with your questions, ben.kaplan@prhacker.com. And we'll do another webinar coming up next week. And also we'll do more interactive ones. We'll be able to ask questions, go back and forth, and look forward to learning more about your business. All right, thanks everyone. Take care. Cheers.